The coffee cup on the table was still steaming when Lorie Ann Whitfield vanished in the riverside town of Yazoo City, Mississippi, population 9,312. The August night of 1981 arrived with thick humidity and golden spots of light spilling from the Main Street diner, where the 24-year-old waitress had just finished her shift. At 10:18 p.m., Lorie's neighbor, Dorothy Mayfield, looked through her kitchen window and saw her step down from a red Ford F-100, holding a small canvas bag. That truck belonged to Shawn Briggs, her ex-boyfriend, whom she had just broken up with after weeks of being harassed by angry phone calls. The older woman watched Lorie's silhouette open the door to the apartment next to the Yazoo River Bridge, the lights inside turning on and then off in less than 10 minutes. What happened in the next 52 minutes would leave Yazoo City haunted for over 40 years. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. In the summer of 1981, Yazoo City was still a small town in the heart of Mississippi's central delta, surrounded by cotton fields and low-lying swamps along the Yazoo River. The August air was thick with humidity, the atmosphere carrying the scent of mud and machine oil from the repair shops along the riverbank. The townspeople lived quietly, rarely dealing with anything bigger than minor fender benders or church gossip. On the main road leading to the Yazoo River Bridge, the Main Street diner stayed open late, where workers and long-haul truckers often stopped for coffee. There, 24-year-old Lorie Ann Whitfield worked as a waitress. She was quiet, lived simply, and was known to regulars for always carrying a leather-bound order pad. After years of shared rentals, Lorie had just moved into a small apartment near the bridge, a few minutes' drive from work. The new place had only basic furnishings, an old wooden chair, a small dining table, and a green curtain she'd hung temporarily with wire. Many neighbors said she seemed excited, saying she wanted to start over after an uneasy breakup with Shawn Briggs, a local mechanic she'd dated for nearly a year. On that mid-August night, Yazoo City lay silent under the lingering heat. A few people living near the complex saw a red Ford F-100 truck driving slowly down the narrow road to Lorie's new apartment. They recognized the driver as Briggs. The headlights swept across the yard, then stopped. They saw the two talk briefly on the porch, no arguing, no shouting. Then the lights inside came on for a moment and went out. No one paid further attention. The next morning, when the morning shift started at the Main Street diner, Lorie didn't show up. Her phone went unanswered. Coworkers thought maybe she'd overslept, but by noon, she still hadn't appeared. Jennifer Cole, Lorie's older sister, called multiple times with no response. She drove to the apartment complex. The air was still hot, insects buzzing along the dirt road. The apartment door was ajar, inside dead silent. Everything in the house was tidy, no signs of disturbance or theft, just an eerie emptiness. Jennifer went out to the yard, asked neighbors, but no one knew when Lorie had left. She drove along the riverbank, past the bridge, stopped to look down at the murky water, no unusual signs. On the way back, Jennifer decided to go to the Yazoo County Sheriff's Office to report her sister missing. For her, it was just the first step of a long day that began in silence. At the Yazoo County Sheriff's Office, the duty room had only 2 officers working the weekend. Jennifer Cole walked in, still clutching her purse tightly, sweat soaking the back of her shirt after a morning searching everywhere for her sister. She explained that Lorie had never run away before, had no reason to leave Yazoo City without telling anyone. The duty officer took a preliminary report, then passed the case to Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin, who handled civil files and minor cases in the area. Irwin was a middle-aged man, cautious by nature, having served in traffic patrol before being promoted. When he received the file, he read the first few lines and asked again about the last time Jennifer saw her sister. The answer caught his attention. A neighbor had seen Shawn Briggs, Lorie's ex-boyfriend, at the apartment the night before. Jennifer detailed the relationship. They'd dated for over a year, broken up a few months ago because Briggs was jealous and often showed up unannounced at Lorie's workplace. She also said Briggs had come to the family home to try to convince Lorie to take him back, but was refused. Irwin wrote in his notebook, "Strained personal relationship, possibly the last person to see the victim." After the conversation, Jennifer signed the missing person report. Police created an initial file, classifying the case as missing adult, with no clear criminal elements. Under state rules at the time, adults over 18 were considered free to leave their residence if there was no evidence of coercion. So the investigation was limited to verifying identity, friends, and workplace. Irwin sent 2 officers to Lorie's apartment to check the scene. They noted the door was unlocked, belongings undisturbed. A short typed report stated, "No signs of violence or break-in. Need to verify victim's recent contacts." Irwin called the Main Street diner, confirming Lorie had missed 2 shifts in a row, without calling in or contacting anyone. The owner said she was a punctual employee, never missed without notice. This information led Irwin to expand the initial steps, contacting other acquaintances. The list provided by the family included 3 coworkers, 1 neighbor, and Shawn Briggs. When police contacted him, Briggs answered the phone from the garage, where he worked in the industrial area south of town. His voice calm, he said. He did go to her place last night, help move a few boxes. According to Briggs, Lorie said she wanted to be alone for a few days, so he left before midnight. He claimed not to know where she went. Irwin recorded the statement, asked Briggs to come to the station if needed. In the internal memo, he noted no signs of crime, but need to monitor the relationship between the two. That afternoon, Irwin met Jennifer again to confirm some personal details: date of birth, marital status, Lorie's daily habits. She said her sister rarely traveled far, had no friends outside town, didn't drive long distances, and usually went straight home after work. He asked about debts, conflicts, or plans to leave Yazoo City, but Jennifer denied all. In the summary, Irwin wrote that Lorie was a local citizen, calm temperament, no reason to abandon her home. Still, per regulations, the case remained classified as undetermined criminal nature. By the end of the day, all documents were clipped together, assigned case number 81234M. A copy was sent to the sheriff's office. The original kept at the county. In the duty log, a brief entry appeared, received missing person report. L. Whitfield, female, 24 years old. Last seen at new apartment near Yazoo River Bridge. Status: open. That was all the Yazoo City authorities had on the first day of the case. Just a thin file with a few pages of notes, and no specific hypothesis about why Lorie disappeared. The morning after the file was opened, the first search party was mobilized. Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin coordinated with 3 officers and a few locals who knew the Whitfield family to sweep the area around the rental complex where Lorie lived. Yazoo City had no dedicated rescue team, so the search was manual, people walking the narrow alleys, others using wooden boats to scan the riverbank. The apartment complex was near the Yazoo River Bridge, the road leading west out of town, where the river narrowed and both banks were thick with reeds. In August, the river water was murky, the current slow, the surface covered with floating debris and oil slicks. The search team followed the downstream direction, from the parking lot near Lorie's home to the area under the bridge, but found nothing beyond a few old tire tracks. Irwin split the group into 2, one sweeping the residential area, the other searching the dirt roads down to the river. By noon, they found Lorie's yellow Ford Pinto parked in a vacant lot near the bridge, less than a mile from the apartment. The car was locked, undamaged, no signs of break-in. Inside were a few personal items, a leather wallet, a notebook, and a gas receipt, all intact. The driver's seat was pushed back, radio off, keys not in the ignition. Irwin noted the location, had the car photographed, then had it towed to the station lot for further checks. Nothing in the car suggested a struggle or theft. As evening fell, the search team returned to the residential area. They knocked on every door, but most residents said they heard no strange noises the night Lorie vanished. An older woman upstairs recalled hearing a truck engine leave quite late, but wasn't sure whose, because the area often had vehicles coming and going to the bridge. With no further useful information, the first day's search ended. The next morning, police expanded the scope. 2 motorboats were sent down the river, scanning from the bridge downstream about 3 miles. The water was still, mixed with rotting branches and household trash, making visibility difficult. Officers used iron hooks to probe the shallow bottom areas, but pulled up nothing noteworthy. On the bridge, Irwin examined the rusted iron railing, noting a few fresh scratches, but unable to determine the cause. He marked it on the area map, planning to check further with better equipment. On the east bank, the local group walked the dirt road, searching the reed thickets. They only found a few pieces of rotten wood, unrelated. By mid-afternoon, temperatures soared, the search growing exhausting. Irwin called a pause to compile reports. In the end-of-day memo, he concluded that no evidence of criminal activity, victims' movement after leaving home undetermined. The small town began to buzz. Many thought Lorie might have left Yazoo City for a new job. Others said she was just avoiding Briggs. Police neither dismissed nor confirmed any theory, but continued riverbank observation for one more day. On the second day, the search area expanded north of the bridge, where there was alluvial land and a turnoff to an old residential area. Volunteers carried iron rods to probe the bushes, looking for clothing or discarded items. They recovered a pair of rubber sandals drifting near the shore, but the size didn't match Lorie's. Another group checked the paved road leading to Highway 49, where trucks often passed, but found no special traces. Light rain fell in the afternoon, mud making movement difficult. By nightfall, Irwin gathered the search team at the station lot, thanked the volunteers, and paused the operation. In the file he wrote, 2 days of searching, no definitive physical evidence recovered, no new witnesses. Victim's vehicle found, locked, undamaged. The investigation halted there, with the first scattered data, an empty apartment, a car abandoned near the bridge, and a woman who vanished without leaving any clue about her direction. In the early days after the search operation paused, Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin shifted focus to verifying witnesses. He had officers re-screen the list of people living around Lorie Whitfield's new apartment and planned to take statements one by one. The complex had only 6 rental units, mostly workers in town or retirees. They all knew Lorie had moved in less than a month ago, lived quietly, and interacted little. They all confirmed she was home the evening before she vanished. An elderly couple upstairs said they heard a truck stop in front of Lorie's apartment late in the evening. They recognized the familiar engine sound of the red Ford F-100 that Shawn Briggs often drove, as he had been there many times before. According to them, the truck stayed about 15 or 20 minutes, then they saw the lights inside come on and go off. No shouting or arguing, just the soft sound of a door closing. This information matched what Jennifer had said, that Briggs had been bothering Lorie recently. Irwin took careful notes. Had the couple signed the statement? In the adjacent apartment, a woman named Dorothy Mayfield provided a more detailed statement. She was about 50, widowed, living alone. She said that on the evening Lorie vanished, while watering plants on the porch, she saw Briggs drive up in the truck. In the truck bed was a large, dark object covered with an old tarp. The porch light was dim, but she could still make out the rectangular shape, as wide as the bed and up to mid-back height. Briggs parked in the yard, turned off the engine, got out, and looked around. She only saw him open the truck bed a few times, seemingly checking something, then go into Lorie's apartment. She heard no strange noises, just saw the truck leave afterward. When Irwin asked why she hadn't mentioned it earlier, she said she didn't think it was serious at first, thought it was just Lorie's belongings being brought over. Mayfield's statement was deemed important by Irwin, as she was the only witness describing an object in the truck. He recorded the description large object, box-shaped, covered with tarp, in Briggs' truck bed in the report, but knew it wasn't enough for criminal evidence. Irwin continued to the Main Street diner, where Lorie worked, to talk to coworkers. 3 female employees said that in the final week before she vanished, Lorie seemed stressed and often took phone calls during shifts. One remembered that on 2 consecutive evenings, she had to go out back to take calls and returned looking flustered. When asked, she only said briefly, "It's Briggs, same old thing." Another employee said Briggs once came to the diner, sat for hours in the corner, ordered nothing, just stared toward the counter where Lorie worked until the manager subtly asked him to leave. Irwin had the manager confirm. He nodded, saying the man seemed off, but hadn't caused trouble. These statements were compiled into the file, clearly showing the strained relationship between Lorie and Briggs in the time leading up to her disappearance. Irwin noted the matching details: Briggs' appearance at the apartment, the constant calls, Lorie's anxious demeanor. However, it all stopped at verbal witness accounts. No physical evidence, no signs of a fight or criminal violation. In the legal context of Mississippi in 1981, police couldn't arrest someone on suspicion alone unless violence or clear criminal intent was proven. Irwin considered temporary surveillance on Briggs, but his force was small and lacked legal basis. He noted in his work log, "Need to gather more physical evidence before requesting a search warrant." Ultimately, he completed a 5-page witness summary detailing times, locations, and relevant observation. The report was sent to the sheriff's office with a recommendation to continue investigating the truck and any items in Briggs's truck bed. Leaving the office, Irwin knew the case was at a standstill. Many witnesses, suggestive details, but no concrete evidence to turn suspicion into legal action. 2 days after completing witness statements, Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin decided to return to Lorie Whitfield's apartment for a more thorough scene documentation. He wanted to ensure no detail was missed, as the vague feeling about her final evening still troubled him. Yazoo City had no dedicated forensics team, so Irwin went with 1 officer for photos and an administrative clerk for minutes. Lorie's apartment was on the ground floor of a 2-story brick building, with a narrow path behind leading to a vacant lot. The door still had the temporary seal from the initial check, the lock intact. Upon entering, a faint smell of damp and dust filled the room. Weak light through the window made the space seem narrower. Irwin had all curtains opened, photos taken of every corner. All furnishings were in place: wooden chair, small dining table, bookshelf by the window, table fan on the fridge. No signs of struggle, disturbance, or theft. The wallet Jennifer said was Lorie's was gone, likely taken with her. Next to the landline phone, the cord was stretched taut, the wall plug loose, as if yanked out. Irwin examined closely and noted in the report, phone cord detached from wall, not broken, likely pulled by hand. In the living room, the light wood floor had a few small scratches, unclear if new or old. He used a flashlight along the table legs and found a small piece of gray duct tape covered in dust. The piece was tiny, about 3 centimeters long, rolled up, with fine hairs on the surface. He carefully picked it up with tweezers, placed it in a nylon bag. In the kitchen, the sink had 2 glasses, one with dried coffee residue, the other empty. The fridge was plugged in, still had food. The dining table had 2 chairs, one slightly pulled out of place, but no signs of tipping. Irwin collected a few hairs from the tabletop, used tweezers to place them in a paper bag. In the bedroom, the bed was neat, blanket flat, only the pillow slightly shifted to one side. He noted the bed showed no signs of use that night, the sheet clean, no wrinkles. In the corner, the alarm clock on the wooden nightstand had stopped near 10 o'clock, possibly from being unplugged. He photographed it, marked the position. Under the bed, the floor had a thin layer of dust. When shining the light close, he saw a small circular area where dust had been swept aside. Irwin bent down, collected some of that dust with a cardboard scraper, placed it in a separate envelope, noting dust sample from bedroom floor, small slide mark. In the closet, Lorie's clothes hung neatly suitcase in the corner. No signs of hurried packing. Everything suggested she left the apartment normally, or someone left with her without disturbance. Irwin had additional photos taken of the front door and windows. The kitchen window frame had a few old scratches, rusted. The door trim paint was peeling slightly, no pry marks. After nearly 2 hours, the team finished documentation. In total, they collected 3 small items: duct tape piece, hairs, and floor dust sample. Irwin cataloged the evidence, labeling sequentially: a 1 tape, a 2 hair, a 3 dust. The samples were packaged in separate envelopes, stamped with date, month, and his signature. At the station, Irwin submitted all evidence to storage. Per Yazoo County procedure at the time, samples weren't sent for analysis immediately unless the case was confirmed criminal. He only requested they be kept in the file cabinet for future comparison. In the scene report, he concluded, "No signs of struggle detected, property intact, scene clean, possibly cleaned or unaffected. Several small items collected, sealed, and stored." The report was compiled into a thin folder, case number 81, 234 stamped in the corner. That was the entire result of the first official scene examination since Lorie Whitfield was recorded as missing. After completing the apartment examination, Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin decided to expand the investigation downstream along the Yazoo River, the area considered the last point with signs of Lorie's movement. The Yazoo River Bridge was less than a mile from her rental complex, connecting the town center to the agricultural area west. It was a degraded 2-lane iron bridge, with rusted outer railings, where several accidents had occurred with vehicles sliding off the shoulder. Due to its proximity to where Lorie's car was found, Irwin believed the area needed thorough checking. He requested support from the local rescue unit and mobilized 3 wooden boats along with 5 volunteers for the search. That morning, the river surface was calm, the water murky from overnight rain. The rescue team moved in 2 directions, one group probing the area around the bridge footings, the other scanning the grassy banks and alluvial flats. Irwin, along with a criminal officer, handled documentation and photographing the bridge railing. While bending down to examine the outer iron edge, he noticed a slide mark about 30 centimeters long, with red paint smeared on the rusted metal surface. In the sunlight, the paint appeared fresher than the surrounding area, not yet oxidized. Irwin used a thin knife to scrape a sample, placed it in a plastic bag, and labeled it B1. The slide mark extended from the bridge edge toward the river, resembling the trace of a heavy object dragging before falling. Directly below that spot, the river was deep, with swirling currents. He had boats approach the area underneath, dropping iron hooks to probe the bottom, but finding no large objects. The depth measured over 5 meters, thick mud making searching difficult. Rescue team members reported only pulling up a few rotten logs, floating debris, and old wire. Along the west bank, reeds nearly 2 meters high obstructed the view. One volunteer found faint tire tracks on the damp soil leading to the water's edge. But since the area was frequently used by trucks for resting, the timing couldn't be determined. Irwin had photos taken, measured the distance from the tracks to the bridge railing, and noted it on the scene diagram. At noon, as the sun rose, he called a break, gathering the rescue team in the parking lot near the bridge to summarize. Some suggested the red paint could be from a vehicle scraping while turning, as the area was narrow and trucks often had to back up to pass. Still, Irwin paid attention because the paint color matched Briggs' vehicle. He didn't voice this, only noting in his personal log, red paint mark, possible link to Ford F-100. In the afternoon, they continued checking the southern bank area, where a small dirt road led to an abandoned farm. On the damp grass, Irwin noticed several parallel indentations, possibly old tire tracks now blurred by rainwater. He had the distance between the 2 tracks measured, resulting in a width equivalent to a light-duty truck axle. However, the soil surface was soft and deformed, preventing determination of when they formed. Along this stretch, no personal items or signs of spillage were found. As the sun set, wind from the river blew strongly, carrying cold moisture. The rescue team packed up tools and returned. Irwin stayed at the bridge a bit longer, leaning on the railing looking down at the water. He marked the paint spot with white paint, planning to recheck with specialized equipment. That evening, in his office, he completed a temporary report. Examination of Yazoo River Bridge area. Noted fresh red paint on railing, suspected vehicle scrape mark. Height and direction of slide indicate possible heavy object, strong contact before falling. No body or large object found underwater. No additional evidence. The report was attached with 2 photos of the railing, a sketch of the bridge, and Lorie's car position relative to the scene. Irwin forwarded the documents to the sheriff's office, with a request to continue monitoring the bridge area as a suspicious point. Although there was no definitive evidence, he felt something was off. A missing woman, a car abandoned near the bridge, and fresh red paint on rusted metal. But per procedure, all conclusions had to be based on specific evidence, and at that moment, what he had was only the slide trace on the iron railing and the silent mud under the Yazoo River. After completing the bridge area check, Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin refocused on the suspect direction. In the witness statements, the name Shawn Briggs appeared multiple times and was the last person seen with Lorie Whitfield. He decided to fully screen the man's entire background. Briggs, 27 years old, born and raised in the Jackson suburbs, moved to Yazoo City to work as a mechanic about 3 years prior. He rented a small house near the industrial area, working for a private garage specializing in truck repairs. The county's administrative records listed him as single, with no serious prior convictions, but his background declaration had a vague section about his time in Jackson. Irwin contacted the Jackson Police Department to request old file searches. It took nearly a week for the blurry faxes to arrive. An arrest in May 1978 for menacing and unlawful restraint of a girlfriend. The victim was Cece Owens, 20 years old. According to the file, Briggs was charged with menacing and unlawful restraint, received an administrative fine, and was barred from contact with the victim for 6 months. The case was later classified as sentence served, no longer binding. Irwin read every line carefully, underlining the description in the report. Subject choked victim, cut hair and threatened to kill if she left. This detail caught his attention because it matched Jennifer's account that Lorie had been controlled by Briggs, often followed, and visited unannounced at work. Irwin decided to call Cece Owens directly, who still lived in Jackson. After several contacts, Cece agreed to meet to provide information. The session took place in a small room at Jackson PD headquarters. Cece, now 23, a nursing intern, said Briggs appeared mild-mannered on the surface, but quick to anger. She clearly recounted the 1978 incident during an argument. Briggs blocked the door, pulled her to the floor, choked her, cut her hair, and kept her in the room for hours. When neighbors heard screams and called police, he released her. Cece affirmed Briggs had extreme possessiveness, once threatening that, if she left him, no one would find the body. Upon hearing about the Yazoo City disappearance on the radio, she immediately thought of Briggs and called to report, but couldn't connect with the lead investigator. Now, with Irwin reaching out, she stated clearly, "He's capable of worse. I believe Lorie is in trouble." Irwin recorded the entire conversation and obtained copies of the old case report. Back in Yazoo, he presented to the sheriff that there was sufficient reason to summon Briggs again. Briggs was invited to the station as a person of interest, not an official suspect. The interrogation took place in the afternoon. Briggs wore work clothes, hands still oily, appearing confident. When Irwin asked about the night Lorie vanished, he repeated his old statement. Went to help her move a few boxes, talked briefly, then went home. He said he didn't know where she went, and maybe she wanted to leave Yazoo City. Irwin presented the 1978 prior conviction information, asking why it wasn't disclosed in his personal file. Briggs evaded, saying it was old, just a relationship misunderstanding. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed irritation when Cece Owens was mentioned. Irwin asked him to explain the gasoline stains on his sleeve from the previous meeting. Briggs replied he was washing the truck that day, unrelated to the disappearance. When asked about the metal box witness Dorothy Mayfield saw, he denied, "I only carried a few cardboard boxes, no metal box. Irwin observed Briggs always answered quickly, briefly, with no pauses. When asked to allow inspection of the truck, he said he'd sold it to an acquaintance in Vicksburg the previous week, but provided no paperwork. Although the answers were contradictory, Irwin had no specific evidence to hold him. He tried to keep Briggs longer, probing into the personal relationship with Lorie. Briggs only said, "We were still friends. I didn't do anything wrong." The interrogation ended after over 2 hours. Briggs left the station, not detained. Irwin sat reviewing his notes, feeling uneasy. All signs pointed to one conclusion, but legal procedure didn't allow action without evidence. He wrote in the internal report, "Subject has history of violence, contradictory statements, lack of physical evidence. Need continued monitoring." C.C. Owens sent him an additional copy of the 1978 statement, attached with a photo of her injuries at the time. Irwin attached it to Lorie Whitfield's file, labeling B2. He also requested Jackson Unit to transfer the original file for storage in Yazoo's system. In the work log, he wrote the final line of that day, "Shawn Briggs, motive, opportunity, but unprovable." When turning off the office light, he knew that from now on, Briggs would be the name mentioned most in all reports of case number 81-234. After the Shawn Briggs interrogation, Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin felt the need to thoroughly check his workplace and residence. The contradictory details in the statement, along with the violence history, made him believe physical traces might have been overlooked. The next day, Irwin drafted a document requesting the Yazoo County Court to issue search warrants for the house and garage where Briggs worked, citing related to the disappearance of citizen Lorie Ann Whitfield. Subject has history of violence and was the last confirmed contact with the victim. The warrants were approved late afternoon. The following morning, Irwin, along with 2 officers, executed the search at Briggs' house in the southern suburb of town. The small tin-roofed house had an attached garage behind, reeking of gasoline and oil. Briggs appeared surprised but didn't object, presenting the keys. Irwin required him to stand outside while the team conducted the search. In the garage, the cement floor was still wet in spots, with fresh gasoline spills. An empty plastic drum sat by the door, still smelling of solvent. Irwin noted the strong characteristic odor of gasoline and machine oil, irritating to the eyes. They started with the main work area, tool bench, metal shelves and parts racks. Everything was arranged unusually neatly, as if recently cleaned thoroughly. While bending to check, the assisting officer discovered long scratches on the floor of the Ford F-100 truck parked in the garage. The truck bed was spotless, not a speck of dust. Water still pooled at the edges. Irwin, wearing gloves, touched the bed floor, feeling slippery with heavy solvent smell. He noted signs of washing with gasoline or similar solution. Inside the cabin, seats and floor were dry, no strange items. In the garage corner, he saw a stack of invoices and papers on a wooden table. Among them was a receipt from AutoZone in Jackson, dated August 10, 1981, clearly listing tool chest model R2157, quantity 1. The price was large enough to draw attention. Irwin asked Briggs about the receipt. He said it was a toolbox for tools, purchased but not yet picked up. The answer led Irwin to note in the report, subject confirms purchase of large box-shaped metal object, location undetermined. He had the receipt photographed and temporarily seized the original, labeling C1. Additionally, in the garage were a few small items: old rope coil, truck tarp, and an empty metal drum, unremarkable. Irwin continued checking the main house. The living room was messy, walls hung with a few photos of Briggs beside trucks. On the dining table were beer glasses, cigarette ashes, and the previous day's local newspaper reporting Lorie's disappearance. In the bedroom, the bed was unmade, clothes scattered. Under the mattress, they only found vehicle insurance papers and a few pay stubs. No evidence directly related to the victim was discovered. After nearly 3 hours, the search concluded. While sealing the scene, Irwin asked Briggs one last time about the toolbox. He only said briefly, "I plan to pick it up next week, Probably the store hasn't delivered yet. His indifferent attitude increased Irwin's suspicion. In the report drafted immediately after, Irwin described in detail, subject's truck unusually clean, bed has gasoline smell and wash marks, fresh scratches, discovered receipt for tool chest model, UR 2157, suspected object described in witness Dorothy Mayfield's statement. No direct evidence linked to victim. The report was attached with 8 photos of the garage, copy of the invoice, and supplemental statements from the 2 participating officers. That same evening, Irwin forwarded the file to the sheriff's office, recommending continued monitoring of the subject. However, due to lack of specific criminal evidence, the prosecutor's office couldn't proceed with charges or detention. Briggs was allowed to continue working, but his name was officially marked in internal files as potential suspect number 1. In the duty log, Irwin wrote a brief line, search completed, gasoline wash signs, large object purchase receipt. No basis for arrest. At that point, the Lorie Whitfield case was still considered an undetermined disappearance, and all police had was the lingering gasoline smell on the truck bed, a purchase receipt, and a man who stayed silent more than he spoke. 4 months after Lorie Whitfield was reported missing, the case file showed almost no progress. The results from searches, witness statements, and scene checks all led to the same point. No physical evidence proving a crime had occurred. Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin's monthly periodic reports grew thicker page by page, but only repeated old data. Empty apartment, abandoned car, paint on the bridge, and Shawn Briggs' contradictory statements. He had submitted 3 requests for analysis of samples collected from the apartment and garage, but in Mississippi at that time, forensic labs prioritized cases with identified victims or clear criminal evidence. Lorie's case was classified as missing adult, so all evidence remained in the county's storage cabinet. In late December 1981, Irwin submitted the initial investigation phase summary report, stating, no additional witnesses or evidence collected. No specific criminal act discovered. File status. Unresolved. Open. He folded the file, attaching the sealed envelopes containing the duct tape sample, hairs, floor dust, purchase receipt, and bridge paint photos. All were labeled 81-234, transferred to the basement storage of the Yazoo Police Department for long-term keeping. The brown envelopes were placed alongside dozens of other old files, the spine labeled handwritten, Whitfield, Lorie A. missing. The feeling of leaving the case unfinished bothered Irwin. He had believed that just one more small piece of evidence would clarify the story, but all leads had gone cold. Briggs continued working at the garage for a few weeks after, then suddenly left Yazoo City. According to personnel office information, he quit citing moving to a job in another state. A few acquaintances said he went to Monroe, Louisiana, where a relative worked in a large truck repair shop. No one knew the exact address. Irwin had it verified, but without an official tracking order, the search couldn't proceed. In the final memo of the year, he wrote, subject possibly left the area, current residence undetermined. In January 1982, the sheriff's office conducted a review of pending cases. When reaching the Whitfield file, the review board head read through and concluded briefly, insufficient criminal elements, temporarily close until new information. The decision was stamped, returned to Irwin. He carried the file back to storage, signing the handover log, received and archived. Case 81-234, status inactive. The basement iron door closed, the lock clicking dryly in the damp space. The final evidence of Lorie Whitfield's disappearance lay neatly in cabinet slot 14, beside old 1970s files. In Yazoo City, the story of the diner waitress faded into memory. Local press stopped mentioning it. The Whitfield family rarely contacted again, and Shawn Briggs' name no longer appeared in police reports. With the sluggish administrative system of a small town in 1981, classifying the file as undetermined missing meant it no longer had regular follow-up. Wade Irwin still remembered every detail, but he knew he could do no more. When spring 1982 arrived, the Lorie Whitfield case officially lay among hundreds of dust-covered files, closing the first investigation phase of Yazoo County without anyone knowing that the small traces collected that year would remain dormant in the dark for over 40 more years. 41 years after File 81-234 was closed and moved to the basement of the Yazoo Police Department, a new program by the Mississippi Department of Justice was launched to review unsolved cases. Called the Cold Case Initiative, the project focused on old files from the 1960s to 1990, especially disappearances or suspected homicides without recovered bodies, with the goal of applying modern forensic technology to reevaluate evidence. The State Investigative Bureau coordinated with local police departments, compiling a list of over 700 archived cases. Yazoo County, though a small county, had 11 files selected for review, including the Lorie Ann Whitfield case number 81-234. In March 2022, Lieutenant Ava Keener, an investigator with the Department of Justice's Special Crimes Unit, was assigned to handle the Yazoo cluster. She had participated in many cold case resolutions using DNA testing and microevidence analysis. Upon receiving the assignment, Keener traveled to Yazoo City with a small team of 2 technicians and 1 archivist. The basement where old files were stored retained its outdated structure with long rows of metal cabinets covered in thick dust. The archivist took nearly an hour to locate the Whitfield file, a faded hard folder, rotted binding string, containing over 50 pages of paper and several sealed envelopes. On the label, the handwritten text was faint but legible. Whitfield, Lorie Ann, missing, 1981. Ava Keener opened it for a preliminary check, 3 envelopes holding evidence, a piece of duct tape, hair strands, and a floor dust sample. 1 separate envelope with a copy of a purchase invoice and photos of the Yazoo River Bridge scene. All still bore the original seals and signatures of Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin. She instructed the archivist to document the condition, then resealed them with new codes per current regulations. While reviewing Irwin's final 1981 summary report, Keener noted that the evidence had never been sent for analysis. At that time, Mississippi had no DNA lab, and microevidence analysis was in early experimental stages. Now, those small samples could be the key. Keener marked the case as Priority Type A, files with intact evidence and high biological identification potential. In a meeting with State Department of Justice representatives, she presented a summary. File 81-234 is a young female disappearance. No body recovered. Evidence includes hair and tape never analyzed. This is a case suitable for modern DNA technology. The proposal was approved the same month. All evidence was sealed and transported to the Jackson Forensic Unit under secure protocol. Simultaneously, Keener requested the Criminal Records Division to retrieve information on all individuals mentioned in the original reports. The Whitfield family, witness Dorothy Mayfield, and especially Shawn Briggs, the last person noted in Irwin's reports. When the database returned results, she received a brief note: Briggs, Shawn Thomas, deceased, 2009, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The name appeared with several old files in the violent crime database. Keener saved the information, but her immediate focus remained verifying the evidence condition and analysis feasibility. In her work log, she wrote, 81-9234, evidence unprocessed, samples intact, seals untorn. Objective, determine usable DNA and verify data integrity. By late April 2022, initial lab evaluation results confirmed that the hair and tape fragment still allowed DNA extraction. This was considered an early success, as most cases from the same era were damaged or lost. Keener immediately moved the Whitfield file back to the open investigation list. At the Department of Justice office, she noted in an internal report, Yazoo 1981 case has well-preserved biological evidence, suitable for next-generation DNA technology. Recommend reclassification, active cold case. On May 17, 2022, the file was officially reactivated, assigned updated code 81-234R. In the central system, a brief notification appeared, case reopened for forensic re-examination, Yazoo County, Mississippi. After over 40 years, Lorie Ann Whitfield's name once again appeared on Mississippi's active investigation roster. In June 2022, the samples from File 81-234 were officially transferred to the Jackson Forensic Unit for analysis. This lab was Mississippi's most advanced forensic center, capable of processing old biological samples with next-generation DNA extraction techniques. Lieutenant Ava Keener personally oversaw the process, requiring each step to be separately documented since this was original 1981 evidence. Before breaking seals, the technician team surface scanned each envelope for damage and took archival photos. The first sample was the 3-centimeter gray duct tape piece with dust streaks and fine hairs adhered. The second consisted of 3 hairs collected from the apartment dining table, wrapped in wax paper. The third was a metal key engraved with the number R2157, noted in Deputy Sheriff Irwin's report, but never closely examined. Keener ordered each sample separated and relabeled to new standards. Exhibit 1, tape fragment. Exhibit 2, hair sample. Exhibit 3, key. Specialists began cleaning and sectioning the analysis portions. For the hair, they used a specialized enzyme nuclear cell DNA recovery method, allowing gene sequence extraction from degraded old strands. For the tape, they peeled layers of adhesive, collected adhered epithelial cells, and placed them in preservation solution. The key was handled differently, wiped with a damp swab, checked for latent fingerprints, and micro samples extracted from the grooves. The entire process took over 2 weeks. On June 28, the lab sent preliminary analysis results. The tape contained 2 distinct DNA profiles, one female and one male. The hair showed a single female DNA. The key sample yielded a small male DNA amount, matching the male profile on the tape. All data was entered into the National CO2 database for comparison. Matching took nearly 10 days. When the report returned, the first line on the table made Keener pause and read twice, female profile match, Cole, Jennifer. This meant the female DNA matched a relative's profile in the civil database, Lori's sister, who had provided a sample in a 1990s missing persons identification program. The hair was thus confirmed as Lorie Ann Whitfield's. The second result was even clearer. Male profile match, Briggs, Shawn Thomas. The male DNA on the tape and key perfectly matched the deceased's profile stored in Louisiana. Keener printed copies and cross-referenced with 1981 Yazoo file data. In old notes, Irwin had described Briggs as the owner of a red Ford F-100 and holder of an invoice for tool chest model R2157. The number matching the key engraving. The current biological evidence connected all scattered original file data. Keener immediately sent a summary report to the State Department of Justice, proposing to change File 81-234R status from reopened. Under forensic review to reopened, suspect identified, meaning reopened investigation with deceased suspect. She also requested contact with the Baton Rouge medical examiner to confirm Briggs' DNA storage details. 3 days later, Louisiana's response arrived, original DNA sample taken in 2009 during autopsy. Stored in the state database per automatic protocol. All data matched perfectly. In the final testing phase report, the Jackson lab concluded, DNA results confirmed direct link between samples collected at victim Lorie Ann Whitfield's apartment scene in 1981 and individual Shawn Thomas Briggs, born 1954, deceased 2009 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Random match probability, 1/10 billion. Ava Keener signed confirmation, attaching all results to the electronic file. For the first time in 41 years, Mississippi investigators had scientific evidence pointing to a specific name in the forgotten disappearance. The case was officially shifted to post-mortem investigation status, paving the way to re-examine all of Shawn Briggs' actions during his time in Yazoo City. After DNA results were confirmed, Lieutenant Ava Keener shifted focus to the remaining evidence in the file, the metal key engraved R2157. It was the smallest item, but carried a specific code, unlike the two biological samples. In Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin's 1981 report, the key was collected from Lorie Whitfield's apartment, simply noted as round key, code R2157, origin undetermined. At that time, product lookup technology barely existed, and the code was not linked to any physical object. Keener believed the key could be a critical lead, since DNA results showed Shawn Briggs' biological traces in the metal grooves. She requested the Jackson Lab's mechanical specialist to measure, photograph, and compare the format. Results confirmed it was not a standard house or vehicle key, but an industrial-type lock key, typically used for containers or metal tool cabinets. The code R2157 was machine-stamped, matching standards for late 1970s AutoZone products. Keener directly contacted the company's archives in Memphis, Tennessee, requesting a search for products with this code. 2 weeks later, the technical department sent an official response, or 2157, key series for tool chest model R, 2157, manufactured 1979, 1981, retailed in southern region stores, including Jackson, Mississippi. The attached note included product illustration, a rectangular metal toolbox, about 1 meter long, typically placed in truck beds. This detail reminded Keener of the invoice seized from Briggs' garage, also listing tool chest model R, 2157. She immediately compared dates on the invoice, August 10, 1981, exactly 4 days before Lorie was reported missing. To verify authenticity, Keener requested Mississippi's Commercial Data Archive to assist in retrieving old purchase records from the Jackson AutoZone branch. Since electronic data from that era didn't exist, they manually searched microfilm at the state archives. 1 week later, a copy of the sales slip was found, noting customer S. Briggs, paid cash, tool chest R 2157, 1 unit. The signature on the slip matched the handwriting sample in Shawn Briggs' 1978 Jackson PD personal file. The verification report stated the product was purchased by Briggs and taken the same day. Keener attached the slip copy, original invoice, and key photos in the same evidence folder, cross-referencing numbers for consistency. After compiling, she wrote in the analysis report, Exhibit 3. RA 2157, key perfect match to AutoZone tool chest model R, 2157 line. Purchase history confirms suspect Shawn Thomas Briggs bought the corresponding object in August 1981 in Jackson. Suspect's DNA identified on the key, strengthening direct link between suspect and object of unknown current location. This result was considered high-value circumstantial evidence as it tied two factors: the 1981 witness description of Briggs carrying a box-shaped object in the truck bed, and the purchase invoice plus recovered key. Keener submitted the report to the State Department of Justice with a recommendation to reevaluate the Yazoo River Bridge scene, where red paint and metal slide marks were once noted. In her work log, she wrote briefly, evidence chain closed, DNA, key, invoice, witness description. All point to one specific object, metal toolbox, model R 2157. With this result, the connection between Shawn Briggs and the unidentified object in Lorie Whitfield's disappearance was solidly reinforced, forming the foundation for the next investigative step. In July 2022, after completing evidence analysis, Lieutenant Ava Keener continued screening the original file's witness list. The first name marked priority was Dorothy Mayfield, the woman living next to Lorie Whitfield's apartment in 1981. In Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin's old statement, Dorothy was the only person who described seeing Shawn Briggs at the scene with a large tarp-covered object in the truck bed. Keener wanted to re-verify that statement and check if the woman recalled any unrecorded details. Civil records showed Dorothy still resided in Yazoo City, now over 70 years old. She visited the small house on the eastern edge of town, a tin-roofed structure surrounded by azaleas and bougainvillea. Dorothy received her in a simple living room, narrow window light, highlighting a black and white photo on the wall, an old Yazoo Street corner. Keener introduced herself, explaining the purpose. The Department of Justice was reviewing Lorie Whitfield's disappearance and wanted to confirm the 1981 statement. Dorothy listened, paused, then nodded slowly. She spoke in a hoarse but clear voice. "I still remember, like it was just yesterday." In the over 2-hour interview, Dorothy recounted everything she saw the night Lorie vanished. Around late evening, while watering plants on the porch, she saw Briggs' truck pull into the vacant lot in front of the apartment. Headlights lit up the area. She recognized him immediately from previous visits. The truck bed had something large, covered with a gray tarp. When the wind blew, she heard faint metal clinking. Briggs turned off the engine, stood by the truck a few minutes, then went into Lorie's apartment. The apartment lights turned on, then off, and there was no further movement. The next morning, upon hearing Lorie was missing, Dorothy felt chills, but with no proof. She only told police what she saw. That statement was recorded by Irwin. When Keener asked if she remembered anything about the following days, Dorothy frowned in thought, then said, "There's one thing I never forgot, but no one asked in detail back then." She recounted that about 2 nights after Lorie disappeared, while driving past the industrial area where Briggs worked, she saw him washing the truck under the garage's yellow lights. The scene caught her attention due to the strong gasoline smell spreading across the road. Briggs wore a tank top, bent over scrubbing the truck bed, water flowing onto the cement. She stopped her car a few meters away and saw him pour gasoline from a plastic can directly onto the bed floor and wipe with a rag. "No one washes a truck with gasoline unless they're trying to erase something," she said slowly. Dorothy admitted she was scared, didn't approach, just watched a moment, then drove off. When asked why she didn't report to police, she said she thought she might be mistaken. And when Briggs left town soon after, she assumed it was over. Keener listened to every detail, recording the entire conversation. Dorothy's descriptions remarkably matched the new analysis results: red paint on the bridge railing, gasoline wash marks in the truck bed, and the tool chest Model R 2157 invoice. When Keener showed her the key photo again, Dorothy examined it closely and said, "I don't remember the key, but the box was similar. Briggs once told me he'd just bought a metal box to keep tools and asked me to hold an old tarp for him." She said she returned the tarp the day after Lorie vanished and never saw Briggs again. Keener had her sign the new statement, also reading the confirmation that all information was provided voluntarily. After signing, Dorothy sighed. "I always thought he knew more than he said." She thanked her, promising to follow up if needed. Leaving the house, Keener paused on the steps, looking around the quiet neighborhood. 40 years had passed, but those who lived there still carried the memory of one single night. Back at the office, Keener immediately typed a 7-page interview summary, attaching the recording and witness signature photos. In the conclusion, she wrote, "Witness Dorothy Mayfield confirms 1981, details and provides new statement. Observed suspect Shawn Briggs washing truck with gasoline at garage 2 days after victim's disappearance. Statement aligns with collected physical evidence. Recording and report officially filed, classified, new witness statement, 2022. Reinvestigation." The file was submitted to the Mississippi Department of Justice System, coded 81234R/W1. After completing procedures, Keener sat staring at the screen for a long time. What Dorothy Mayfield recounted not only confirmed the investigation results, but also added the final link between Briggs's actions and the 1981 physical traces. A once-forgotten witness had become new evidence, helping restore the broken chain of events over 4 decades. In August 2022, after compiling the evidence analysis results and the new statement from witness Dorothy Mayfield, Lieutenant Ava Keener proposed an expanded scene survey at the Yazoo River Bridge area, the location marked as a suspicious point in 1981. The goal was to determine if any object related to the Model R 2157 metal toolbox that Shawn Briggs had purchased before Lorie Whitfield's disappearance existed under the riverbed. The State Department of Justice approved the request, assigning the forensic team from the Special Diving and Hydrographic Survey Unit to coordinate the operation. The survey began on the morning of August 11th. The Yazoo River surface was murky and calm, water levels high from early seasonal rains. The two-lane iron bridge remained in the same shape as 40 years prior, only differing in a partial new paint layer on the railing. The forensic team consisted of 6 members, equipped with multi-frequency sonar boats to scan the riverbed structure. The survey area spanned 300 meters around the position where Irwin had discovered the red paint mark in 1981. The sonar scanned in strips, creating a detailed topographic map. Thick mud bottom scattered small objects, including one mass with significantly stronger wave reflection, located about 40 meters southwest of the bridge footing. The shape displayed on the screen was a long rectangular block, nearly half a meter high, metal surface, partially buried in mud. Technicians circled the area, marked coordinates, then lowered a diving camera. In the murky water, the lens only faintly saw a mud-covered metal corner, faint red paint clearly appearing when the light hit it. Keener stood on the boat deck watching the screen, noting in the report, large metal object, box-shaped red color, fixed at depth, 5.4 m, likely same type as Model R, 2157. After confirming coordinates, the forensic team deployed salvage cables. Pulling the object up had to be done slowly to avoid structural damage. After over an hour, the metal block was brought to the surface. Thick mud gradually washed away, revealing rusted hinges and a round lock still caked in mud. When measuring dimensions, the specifications nearly matched the AutoZone product line description for tool chest R, 2157, length 100 centimeters, width 45 centimeters, height 40 centimeters. Old red paint, peeling in patches, beneath the rust, still showed a glossier original layer. The lock was deformed, but the faint engraved code on the lock mouth matched R 2157. Keener ordered photos taken, the scene sealed, then the object transported to the Jackson lab for detailed analysis. During preliminary checks, specialists discovered the lid had aluminum iron alloy hinges, common in the late 1970s. In the box corner, a few small unidentified organic fragments remained adhered, sampled separately. 3 days later, the mechanical analysis report was completed. Metal analysis showed the alloy met AutoZone's production standards for 1979, 1981. Hinge and lock lid structure matched the original product model. Surface paint samples were compared to 1975 Ford F-100 paint, the same type as Briggs' vehicle, resulting in a 99% color match. Under a microscope, the lid surface still retained thin metal slide marks, corresponding to friction from a rusted iron surface, details matching the red paint mark found on the Yazoo Bridge railing in 1981. The analysis report concluded, object recovered from Yazoo River bottom, coordinates 32.8711 n, 90.4034, W, is a Model R, 2157 metal toolbox, manufactured 1979, 1981, with red paint layer matching suspect Shawn Briggs' Ford F-100 paint sample. Material age consistent with early 1980s. Keener read the report in the Department of Justice meeting room, highlighting key points, then saving it to file system 81234-R. All details, from the key invoice, witness statements, to the recovered object, connected into a complete logical chain. In the update report, she clearly noted, survey and salvage results at Yazoo River Bridge confirm existence of metal object with characteristics code and color matching product suspect purchased immediately before victim's disappearance. Material age affirms event period compatibility. Object recovered intact, sealed in stainless steel container, code FX417. Forensic specialists then cleaned and 3D scanned the object. Images showed slight dents on the inner lid surface, possibly from strong impact when falling from height. Yazoo River flow analysis was also conducted at the discovery position, Water swirl direction indicated the object had remained stable for decades, almost unmoved. Based on erosion and sediment layers, specialists estimated the object fell into the river around the early 1980s, with a margin of error no more than 3 years. On August 18, the Mississippi Department of Justice announced internal results. The object recovered under Yazoo River Bridge, highly likely related to the 1981 disappearance. The same day, Ava Keener signed the acceptance report, adding all analysis results and images to the electronic file. In her work log, she wrote 41 years later, the first metal mass from the Yazoo case has surfaced. Technical specifications perfectly match the object suspect purchased. Material age aligns with Lorie Ann Whitfield's disappearance time. The survey ended with more concrete evidence than anything the 1981 investigation ever had. Now, the rusted iron box, peeling red paint, bearing code Rafferty 2157, lay in the State Department of Justice storage, a sole surviving physical proof after over 4 decades, proving that traces forgotten under the Yazoo River were still there, waiting to be found. After the metal object was salvaged and identified as a Model R 2157 toolbox, Lieutenant Ava Keener requested detailed mechanical analysis at the Mississippi Department of Justice Technical Division. The goal was to determine deformation causes and impact direction on the object, thereby reconstructing the final movement before falling into the river. The analysis report opened on August 20, 2022. Mechanical engineers and forensic specialists conducted high-resolution laser scanning of the entire iron box surface. 3D images showed 3 parallel slide marks on the lid, about 12 centimeters long, metal edges thinned, outer rim slightly bent upward in one direction. When comparing the slide mark angle to data recorded from the Yazoo River Bridge railing, the rusted steel section with fresh red paint, discovered in the initial survey, the parameters matched nearly perfectly. Surface tilt angle 17.8 degrees, abrasion spacing 4.2 centimeters, all consistent with metal-on-metal friction with similar railing cross-section. The technical team concluded the iron box impacted a rough iron surface, slid a short distance, then fell, rather than being thrown directly from afar. Impact force and fall direction were also simulated using dynamic software to create equivalent abrasion. The object weighed at least 35 kilograms, pushed off the bridge barrier at 4.5 meters above the river surface, with force from an adult. This result ruled out accidental fall or wind, only possible by intentional action. During object cleaning, specialists collected thick mud and residue from the bottom. Mud samples were separated into 2 parts, the top containing Yazoo River sand mixed with plant debris, the bottom mixed with fine fabric fibers. Under microscope, the fabric showed clear adhesive traces on the surface, the same acrylic base adhesive used in 1970s, 1980s industrial tape. Keener immediately cross-referenced this sample with evidence collected from Lorie Whitfield's apartment in 1981, the small dust-covered tape fragment sealed by Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin. Spectral comparison results showed 98% chemical composition similarity, same adhesive base and silicon particles. The technical report stated, adhesive sample from fabric fibers adhered to R2157 box bottom mud and 1981 apartment scene tape sample have matching molecular structure, very high likelihood of common material origin. Additionally, specialists found red iron oxide paint microparticles in the residue, matching the color spectrum of 1975 Ford F-100 paint, Briggs vehicle type. This reinforced the hypothesis that the object was transported in his truck before being pushed into the river. Inside the box, specialists discovered faint dents at the bottom, indicating a heavy object once lay there. When measuring dent depth and calculating compression force, they estimated the internal weight ranged from 55 to 60 kilograms. No organic objects or hard bones remained, only a few rust flakes and hardened mud residue over time. However, combining assumed weight, box structure and railing slide marks, the kinetic model showed the entire sequence consistent with pushing a heavy container with contents from the bridge to dispose of it. The 26-page technical report, signed by the technical division head, concluded, abrasion, slide, and deformation marks on R2157 metal box, fully consistent with mechanical friction generated upon contact with Yazoo River iron bridge railing. Mud and residue analysis from box show fabric fibers with adhesive matching 1981 victim apartment sample. Red iron oxide traces on surface match suspect Shawn Briggs Ford F100 paint. Combined data confirm object pushed off bridge by human force, not natural fall. Conclusion: intentional disposal. Event age matches early 1980s. Ava Keener carefully read every page of the analysis, cross-referencing with the old scene diagram drawn by Irwin 40 years prior. The mark position possible stop point, Yazoo Bridge, in his handwritten notes, nearly perfectly matched the 2022 salvage coordinates. She photographed both diagrams, overlaying them using GIS software to prove original document accuracy. In the comprehensive report to the Department of Justice, Keener briefly noted, War 2157 object confirmed fallen from Yazoo River Bridge. Physical evidence supports disposal model using metal toolbox. Box samples bear adhesive matching 1981 evidence. Mechanical and physical basis confirm action sequence, transport, stop at bridge, push object, fall into river. With this result, the technical data chain was complete. Key, invoice, witness, and object all converged at one point. In her work log, Keener wrote a memo. The rusted Yazoo Bridge railing retained traces of the past. Small abrasion on iron, fabric, and mud, lingering adhesive, all tell the same story. That object didn't fall on its own, but was pushed to disappear from human sight. After mechanical analysis, results confirmed the object was pushed off Yazoo River Bridge. Lieutenant Ava Keener conducted criminal behavior analysis to determine if collected data fit suspect Shawn Briggs' psychological profile. She requested the Mississippi State Criminal Records Division and Jackson Police Office to provide all documents related to Briggs' 1978 arrest for violence against ex-girlfriend Cece Owens. This file included victim statements, injury photos, and Briggs' home search report at the time. Comparing the two cases, 1978 and 1981, Keener identified a repeating behavioral chain with clear psychological pattern, control, threats, victim isolation, and finally evidence erasure. According to the 1978 file, Briggs and Cece Owens dated nearly a year. In the relationship's final phase, he showed extreme possessiveness, stalking, phone control, sudden workplace appearances, and demanding daily schedules. When Cece announced breakup, Briggs reacted with violence. He detained her in the house, choked her, cut her hair, and threatened, "If you leave, no one will find your body." That statement was recorded verbatim in Cece's 1978 declaration. This action showed combination of physical control and psychological threats, typical in intentional abuse. After the incident, he received a light sentence, only 3 years probation, no jail time. 3 years later, in Yazoo City, the pattern repeated with Lorie Whitfield. Through friend and coworker statements, Lorie received harassing calls, was stalked by Briggs at her diner workplace, and pressured to resume the relationship. When she refused, he continued approaching by helping move items the night she vanished. The similarity was not just in stalking, but in subsequent concealment. Washing the truck with gasoline, cleaning the bed, and disposing of the object in the river all showed evidence erasure awareness, calculated, not impulsive. Keener consulted a criminal psychologist from the Southern Behavior Analysis Institute. They reviewed evidence and statements together. The behavior analysis report identified Briggs as typical of the compulsive control type offender group, individuals with absolute domination needs in intimate relationships. When control was lost, they reacted with destructive behavior to reassert power. This pattern explained Briggs' escalation from threats to violence, then to concealment. From 1978 to 1981, escalation was clear. Initially threats and assault, later restraint and potential lethality. Psychological analysis showed Briggs did not act impulsively, purchasing the R2157 toolbox before Lorie's disappearance indicated preparation, at least in means. He had time to consider, arrange, and proactively handle consequences. The combination of calculation and emotional control characterized organized criminal behavior. Additionally, his victim selection was consistent: young, independent women trying to leave the relationship. In both cases, Briggs showed self-pity, blamed victims for betrayal, and justified he only wanted to talk. These factors indicated lack of empathy, emotional manipulation tendencies, and belief his actions were reasonable. In the comprehensive report, Keener noted, comparison of 1978 and 1981 cases identifies matching behavioral pattern: control, threats, isolation, violent action, consequence concealment. Both occurred in relationship termination context, with obsessive control psychology and evidence erasure behavior. Data reinforces assessment that suspects Shawn Briggs had repeating abuse tendency. Organized action, not random. This conclusion was attached to the file for the Mississippi Department of Justice. With added behavioral analysis, the physical evidence chain was now reinforced by consistent psychological factors, forming a complete picture of Shawn Briggs, an individual with control history, abuse, escalating to extreme action when losing dominance. In her personal notebook, Ava Keener wrote briefly, "Everything followed a pattern. The difference was the second time he left no survivor to tell the story." In September 2022, after completing the behavior analysis report, Lieutenant Ava Keener continued screening physical leads to further strengthen the evidence chain around Shawn Briggs. Her goal was to locate the red Ford F-100 truck, the vehicle believed used the night Lorie Whitfield vanished. According to 1981 records, Briggs claimed he sold it to an acquaintance in Vicksburg, but police couldn't trace specifics then. Keener sent a request to the Mississippi Department of Transportation to retrieve vehicle registration history by VIN. After a week of searching, old records were found on microfilm. The truck with VIN 8N1JX 12544, title transferred on September 19, 1981, to a Harold Givens, residing in Vicksburg suburbs. The back of the transfer paper had a handwritten note, "Truck purchased from S. Briggs, Yazoo City." Keener traced the address, discovering Givens, now over 80, but still living in the same area. She visited him on an early fall morning. The small house was on a dirt road, with an old wooden shed behind. When Keener introduced herself from the Department of Justice, Mr. Givens was cautious, but upon hearing the Ford F-100 mentioned, his eyes lit up. "I remember it, the red truck I bought in the early 80s. He said he purchased it cheaply because Briggs said he needed money fast to move to Louisiana." Upon receiving the truck, the bed had a strong smell, like gasoline mixed with something else, a burnt old machine oil scent. Givens said he had to wash the truck multiple times, even replacing the bed liner, because the smell wouldn't go away. "Back then I thought he used it to haul chemical drums," he recounted. He also remembered the bed had several deep scratches, paint peeling in patches, looking like it scraped metal. Those details matched the 1981 Briggs garage search report description. Keener recorded the entire account, photographed the old registration paper Givens still kept, then had him sign the statement confirmation. Back at the office, Keener drafted a comparison report. Harold Givens' statement confirms F-100 bed had lingering gasoline smell, existing scratches, peeling paint, consistent with 1981 evidence description. She submitted copies of the title transfer and Givens' statement to the case file, coded Supplement D1. At the same time, another discovery came from the Media Archives Division. While screening Yazoo City 1980-1982 photo materials, archivists found an old Polaroid film roll sent by a Briggs friend to police in 1981, but never entered into the file. The film was taken at Briggs' garage, showing him standing beside the Ford truck and a large metal box in the bed. Though the image had faded, the AutoZone label outline on the box sticker was still visible, and the box shape matched model R2157. The corner of the photo had a development date, August 11, 1981. Keener immediately had the photo scanned and digitally restored, then sent to the technical lab for detail verification. The analysis report showed the image unedited, natural lighting, lens distortion consistent with Polaroid SX70 cameras, popular in the early 1980s. Specialists used sizing software, comparing box proportions to Briggs' height, determining box dimensions equivalent to R2157 standard specs. A reflection streak on the lid showed the object painted red, matching the truck color. Based on shadow analysis, the photo was taken in the garage, afternoon exactly as witness Dorothy Mayfield described, seeing Briggs open the truck bed at dusk. Cross-referencing with the AutoZone invoice, Keener noted, the invoice date was August 10, 1981. Only 2 days before the photo date, this timeline confirmed Briggs purchased the toolbox, brought it to the garage immediately, then photographed it with the object. This photographic evidence became a direct link between purchase and possession. In the summary report to the Department of Justice, Keener wrote, 1981 Polaroid photo confirms Shawn Briggs received and used model R2157 metal box during the same period victim, Lorie Whitfield, vanished. Image reflection shows red paint and box position in truck bed matching 22 salvaged object analysis results. Subsequent owner statement confirms bed washed with gasoline, lingering chemical smell. The report ended with the assessment, circumstantial evidence chain complete, consistently linking suspect, vehicle, object, and incident timeline. Ava Keener saved all documents to the Mississippi Department of Justice electronic storage system, assigning updated codes D1, D2. In her personal log, she wrote a short line, "After 40 years, the smallest traces remain in the gasoline smell of the old truck, in the faded Polaroid photo, and in the peeling red paint from the iron box under the Yazoo River." By late September 2022, all analysis results and new witness statements were completed. Lieutenant Ava Keener began the final phase, compiling the investigation file for submission to the Mississippi State Prosecutor's Office for case closure review. She sat in her Department of Justice office in Jackson, facing 7 thick file volumes, each labeled by evidence group, biological, mechanical, witness, supplemental, physical, behavioral, photographic, and legal. Her task now was not gathering more data, but proving the unity of the entire event chain. The comprehensive report opened with DNA results. The Jackson lab confirmed female DNA from the hair strand perfectly matched Jennifer Cole's family sample, affirming it was Lorie Whitfield's hair. Male DNA on the tape fragment and key matched Shawn Briggs' post-mortem profile, deceased 2009 in Baton Rouge. Match probability 1/10 billion ruled out error. Keener wrote, biological evidence confirms suspect Shawn Thomas Briggs' presence in the victim's private space near the disappearance time. The second section presented mechanical evidence. The model R2157 iron box salvaged from the Yazoo River was verified to have hinges, dimensions, and material matching the product Briggs purchased in Jackson in August 1981. The box lock engraved R2157 matched the key recovered from the victim's apartment. Lid slide marks matched friction pattern with the Yazoo River Bridge railing, tilt angle 17.8 degrees, abrasion 4.2 centimeters. Box red paint matched the 1975 Ford F-100 paint Briggs owned. In the mechanical report conclusion, Keener quoted the technical lab verbatim, "Iron box pushed off bridge by human force, dropped into river for disposal purposes." The witness section included 3 main statements. Dorothy Mayfield, neighbor confirming Briggs at Lorie's home the night before disappearance, also recounting seeing him wash the truck with gasoline 2 days later. Harold Givens, new Ford F-100 owner, confirming bed gasoline smell and scratches, likely from metal impact. And C.C. Owens, Briggs' 1978 ex-girlfriend, describing abuse, choking, threats to kill if she left. Each statement quoted verbatim, cross-referenced with physical evidence for unity. Witnesses saw box-shaped object in truck. Purchase invoice confirmed box acquisition. Key matched lock. Box salvaged at bridge position, with vehicle paint mark. The behavioral analysis was presented separately, based on 1978 and 1981 files, plus Southern Behavior Analysis Institute psychologist consultation. Briggs was identified with repeating abuse pattern, compulsive control type, offender with possession tendency, losing control when victim leaves, seeking evidence erasure after violence. Behavioral chain in both cases showed clear escalation, ending in organized disposal. Keener noted in comments, physical and psychological behavioral evidence reflect one single pattern: murder and concealment. Not impulsive, but planned. The report attached the 1981 Polaroid photo of Briggs beside the iron box in the garage, original AutoZone invoice, and Yazoo River survey map, all arranged chronologically: object purchase, transport, victim contact, disappearance, bridge traces, object under river, DNA match. Keener deliberately maintained this linear structure to clarify crime progression and prove logical links between evidence. At the report's end, she wrote a two-page summary conclusion. 1. Victim Lorie Ann Whitfield, confirmed missing in Yazoo City, Mississippi, August 1981. 2. DNA evidence affirms suspect Shawn Thomas Briggs' presence at the scene. 3. Mechanical evidence, Model R 2157 iron box, matches key invoice and suspect's vehicle paint. 4. Witnesses confirm direct contact, gasoline truck washing, and box-shaped object in truck bed. 5. Mechanical analysis proves iron box pushed off Yazoo River Bridge in time, corresponding to disappearance. 6. Behavioral analysis and prior record show suspect's abuse, concealment, and control tendencies. Combining the above factors, the file has sufficient basis to determine Shawn Thomas Briggs responsible for the disappearance and death of Lorie Ann Whitfield. The report was printed in 2 copies, one sent to the Mississippi State Prosecutor's Office, one retained at the Department of Justice. On October 3, 2022, Ava Keener signed the final page, below the line. Recommendation: Case 81-234R, closure for prosecutorial review. The 214-page report included 67 appendices and 39 sealed evidence items. When placing the file on the transfer desk, she paused a few seconds, looking at the cover text. Whitfield, Lorie Ann, Yazoo City, 1981. 41 years later, every scattered detail was finally connected, and the once-forgotten Yazoo County case could be presented to the prosecutor with a clear conclusion based on scientific evidence and accounts from those who still remember. In November 2022, after receiving the full comprehensive report from the Department of Justice, the Mississippi State Prosecutor's Office held a file review meeting for Case 81-234R. The meeting lasted over 6 hours, attended by Department of Justice representatives, forensic investigation lab, and technical specialists involved in analysis. The goal was to evaluate evidence sufficiency and issue final legal decision on Lorie Ann Whitfield's disappearance. State Prosecutor Richard Courtwright personally chaired. He read summaries of each report section: DNA, mechanical evidence, witnesses, and criminal behavior. Concluding the reading, he said briefly, "This file is strong enough to stand in court, even though the suspect is deceased." Legal advisors agreed the evidence chain formed tight links, ruling out discrepancies. After the meeting, an official announcement was prepared within a week. On November 15, 2022, at the Department of Justice headquarters in Jackson, Mississippi, a press conference was held with local media and investigative agencies. The podium stood in the center of the large meeting room, behind a backdrop reading Mississippi Department of Justice Cold Case Initiative. At 10 a.m., Prosecutor Courtwright stepped to the podium, opening the thick marked file, Case 81-234R, Yazoo County. He read slowly, calmly. After extensive review and modern scientific analysis, the Department of Justice and Mississippi State Prosecutor's Office officially conclude that Shawn Thomas Briggs bears legal responsibility for the death of Lorie Ann Whitfield, occurring in August 1981 in Yazoo City. DNA, mechanical, and independent witness evidence proved direct links between the suspect and disposal actions. Though the suspect died in 2009, this file is completed to ensure justice for the victim and family. Below the auditorium, reporters scribbled continuously, cameras flashing. On the projection screen, the Department of Justice presented an investigation timeline summary from Lorie's disappearance date, 1981 search steps, to file reopening 40 years later. A chart displayed the evidence chain: hair, tape, key, invoice, metal box, and Polaroid photo. DNA and mechanical analysis results were specified, proving the R2157 iron box was pushed off Yazoo River Bridge, Briggs' intentional act to erase traces. After the prosecutor's speech, a Department of Justice representative read a supplemental announcement: the Lorie Ann Whitfield case is a prime example of the cold case initiative's effectiveness. Justice may be delayed, but not denied. This program will expand to ensure forgotten cases still have a chance for resolution. A reporter asked if the state planned other legal pursuits. Courtwright replied briefly, "No second suspect. We consider this case resolved." The announcement was sent to major Mississippi newspapers and aired on local television. The evening news summarized the entire event: 1981 Yazoo City disappearance, closed after 41 years. Modern DNA technology identifies responsible party as Shawn Briggs, deceased mechanic in 2009. The same day, Ava Keener received an official decision copy from the prosecutor's office. The first page read, Case 81-234 status, closed, determined by forensic evidence and legal review. At the bottom were Prosecutor Courtwright's signature and the Mississippi Department of Justice round seal. Keener reread each line, then carefully folded the document. To her, this case was no longer an old file, but proof that time fragments, if preserved intact, could still form an answer. In Yazoo City, the news spread quickly. Those who knew Lorie, or heard of the 1981 disappearance, told each other she was finally found. Not physically, but in confirmation someone was responsible for her vanishing. At the small church on Main Street, Lorie's name was read in the annual memorial service for Mississippi's missing victims. 1 week after the press conference, the Department of Justice posted a 14-page public investigation report on its official portal. The conclusion stated briefly, "Scientific evidence and verified statements delivered the final result for Case 81-234. Shawn Thomas Briggs, identified as perpetrator leading to Lorie Ann Whitfield's death. Case considered resolved." On November 21, 2022, the prosecutor's office signed the file closure decision. Documents were transferred to the state central storage system with the note "Cold case resolved after 41 years, Yazoo County." When that text appeared on the internal bulletin, Ava Keener marked the end in her work log. 41 years, from dust on the tape fragment to rust under the bridge, all leading to one single name. The Lorie Ann Whitfield case was officially closed, becoming one of Mississippi's oldest files resolved by DNA evidence and modern forensic analysis, delivering a final answer to a story once thought buried in Yazoo River memory. In December 2022, immediately after the Lorie Ann Whitfield case was officially closed, the Mississippi Department of Justice directed a scientific report summarizing the entire investigation process. The report's goal was to draw lessons on evidence preservation, evaluate next-generation DNA technology effectiveness, and determine mechanical evidence value in resolving cold cases. The report was compiled by the State Forensic Bureau, in coordination with the Judicial Research Institute and Prosecutor's Office, over 2 months. This was the first time a case resolved after over 40 years was included in official investigator training materials. The report's introduction set the context: file #81234R, Yazoo County, is a prime example of maintaining legal value in evidence if preserved per protocol. Forensic specialists noted that despite the 1981 incident, tape, hair, and key samples remained sealed in original paper envelopes, stored in stable conditions. Though without specialized cold storage, placing samples in sealed metal cabinets away from direct light prevented complete DNA degradation. The report emphasized, "This proves the importance of adhering to pre-era manual storage protocols. Every signature, every seal could be a future key." The second section focused on next-generation DNA technology, called next-generation sequencing. Jackson Forensic Unit specialists detailed the recovery process for DNA from over 40-year-old hair and tape fragments. Using enzymes to repair broken gene chains and microanalysis systems, they restored full DNA sequences sufficient for CODIS database comparison. The report stated, "If using 1990s or 2000s technology, these samples would be deemed unusable. Achieved results prove NGS value in old sample recovery." Attached was a matching process diagram describing steps: extraction, cleaning, amplification, comparison, and post-mortem sample validation. This data was then stored in the system for future research. The next section analyzed mechanical technical factors. Department of Justice experts concluded that salvaging the iron box from the Yazoo River bottom and deformation analysis played a decisive role in scene reconstruction. The report wrote, "In cold cases, mechanical evidence is often overlooked due to analysis difficulty, but the Yazoo case proves slide marks, abrasion, and paint can retain accurate information about physical processes decades prior. Notably, the match between box abrasion and bridge railing was used as mechanical evidence confirming disposal action." The report recommended incorporating this method into new technician training programs, combining 3D scanning with traditional physical analysis to process old files with metal traces. In the overall evaluation section, the research team identified 3 success factors: evidence preservation, original file consistency, and modern technology application. 1,981 collected evidence, though simple, was sealed per standard. Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin's file was thorough, detailed notes enabling precise survey coordinates 40 years later. And modern DNA technology delivered undeniable direct evidence. The report wrote, "The Yazoo case bridges 2 investigation eras. One meticulous manual documentation, the other advanced forensic science. Both combined create the final result." The report's conclusion stated clearly, "The Lorie Ann Whitfield case is considered one of Mississippi's oldest files fully resolved by physical evidence, without confession or witness inference. This proves the lasting value of forensic science and file preservation spirit." The Department of Justice simultaneously proposed expanding the cold case initiative, focusing on screening pre-1990 cases with intact evidence. In early 2023, the official report was published under the title Case Study, Preservation and Forensic Integration in Cold Case Investigation: The Yazoo River Incident. The 68-page document was distributed to all police academies and forensic facilities in the state. New investigator training courses were required to read this file as part of the mandatory curriculum. In the training document's introduction, a prominent note stood out: a piece of duct tape, a strand of hair, and a handwritten note. That's all it took to reopen a case thought lost to the past. Yazoo 1981 proves that justice may come slowly, but it is never lost. To recognize contributions, the Mississippi Department of Justice awarded commendations to Lieutenant Ava Keener and the Jackson Lab technical team for their role in reconstructing and resolving the case. At the ceremony, a forensic agency representative stated, "Justice is found not only through technology, but through the persistence in preserving every piece of evidence. Every file cabinet, every sealed envelope, may hold the answer to a forgotten life." The official summary concluded with the research team's assessment: "The Yazoo River case has proven that evidence preservation is not merely administrative procedure, but the foundation of justice. Even after 40 years, science and professional responsibility can meet at the same point, where truth is reclaimed." In January 2023, after completing all legal procedures and publishing the scientific report, the Lorie Ann Whitfield case file, Code 81234, was officially transferred to the National Storage System. At the National Case Archive Facility in Jackson, Mississippi, the nearly 10-kilogram file was placed in a standard NRA storage box with a gold label reading, Resolved Cold Case, Yazoo County, Mississippi. Inside the box were originals, investigation reports, analyzed evidence, DNA copies, scene photos, and 2 handwritten letters. One from Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin in 1981, one from Lieutenant Ava Keener in 2022. Both were clipped together like 2 ends of the same journey spanning over 4 decades. When the file box was sealed and placed on the shelf, the designation closed, historical reference, was updated in the federal database. In the official announcement released on January 20, 2023, the Mississippi Department of Justice confirmed File 81234, Yazoo County, is recognized as one of the longest-running cold cases resolved in the state. The reinvestigation restart after 41 years, with suspect identification via DNA and mechanical evidence, marks a significant milestone in Mississippi's forensic investigation history. The announcement also emphasized that the case held not only legal significance, but served as proof of evidence preservation's value, a seemingly minor process that determines justice's survival in the future. At the Department of Justice's year-end summary meeting, the forensic agency director read a statement. Without the 1981 investigators' diligence in sealing the tape fragment, hair and purchase receipt, without a storage system ensuring those items were not destroyed, and without next-generation DNA technology, we would never know what happened under the Yazoo Bridge that year. The quote was widely cited in the press, becoming the opening for many articles on criminal investigation advancements in the United States. The Yazoo 1981 story was quickly incorporated into Mississippi Investigation Academy professional courses. Trainees were required to read the full 81234R report and analyze preservation, recovery, and evidence comparison methods. In the teaching guide, a prominent note stood out. A case does not die while evidence remains. Justice is not lost while someone preserves the file. The case became a standard example in Southern U.S. forensic technique and cold case investigation seminars, referred to by experts simply as the Yazoo case. In March of the same year, the National Archives announced a list of files recognized for special scientific and legal value. Among them, Mississippi's 81 Miss 234 case ranked 3rd in the long-term resolved cold cases group, behind only 2 well-known cases from Illinois and Oregon. The accompanying note read, "Exemplary case of combining traditional preservation with modern investigative technology, affirming science's role in restoring justice." The entire file was fully digitized, stored in parallel electronically, serving research on long-term evidence preservation processes. On the file transfer day, Ava Keener was present at the archive to sign the final receipt. She stood before rows of gray steel cabinets, where thousands of files were neatly arranged, feeling as if a thick layer of history was closing. The archivist asked if she wanted to add any note to the label. Keener only requested a small line, "For Lorie, 41 years later." That brief phrase was later retained in the file's electronic version. That afternoon, a file copy was sent to the Whitfield family. In the accompanying envelope, the Department of Justice wrote, "We hope this result brings peace, though late, to the victim's family." The Lorie Ann Whitfield case will forever remind us that every piece of evidence, no matter how small, has its own voice. When the final report was entered into the National Data Repository, a brief system status appeared, "Case closed. Verified by forensic integration, Yazoo County, 1981." 41 years after the young woman left the diner on Yazoo's Main Street, one August evening, the final answer was recorded in the language of science, sealed in pages that withstand time. File 81234 is now not just a closed case, but living testimony to the belief that justice, though slow, can still find its way back, if someone is patient enough to preserve the smallest traces of truth. The story of Lorie Ann Whitfield's case in Yazoo City, Mississippi, is not merely an investigation closed after 41 years. It reflects a profound lesson in responsibility, memory, and the value of justice in modern American society. The fact that a piece of duct tape, a strand of hair, and a key were carefully preserved for decades to become case-breaking evidence clearly demonstrates the importance of perseverance and faith in the legal system. Had Deputy Sheriff Wade Irwin in 1981 not meticulously sealed each small item, or had storage agencies not respected preservation protocols, 2022's next-generation DNA technology would never have had the chance to uncover the truth. In today's American life, this lesson applies to many fields that seemingly minor details, if preserved and valued, can make a tremendous difference. On a societal level, the Yazoo case reminds Americans that science and justice only hold true value when connected to human memory and responsibility. It also warns about intimate partner violence, control, and threats like those Shawn Briggs used on C.C. Owens in 1978 were the beginning of the later tragedy. Early identification and prevention of abuse, along with trust in the legal system, are the best ways to protect the modern-day Lories. Ultimately, this story reinforces a foundational American belief: justice may come late, but if society does not forget, if people do not give up, truth can still be reclaimed, even after 40 years, from a river once thought silent forever. If you believe justice is never lost, as long as someone persists in seeking it, please subscribe to join us in exploring more cold cases revived from the shadows. Thank you for following Lorie Ann Whitfield's journey. See you in the next video, where truth continues to be told in the voice of time.